evolution. So in natural selection, environmental factors, the environment, it can cause differential reproductive success. Environment can cause or decide, basically, depending on who it favors, who's going to reproduce with a particular genotype. So you need three things for natural selection. You need a variation. Where does a variation come from? Camelia said it in the very beginning. Where's the variation coming from? What is variation anyway? Look at this picture. What is variation? What is variation? Variation is variety, right? Different alleles. You have different alleles. Camila says mutation. So variation can come from mutation. Maybe there was a mutation and it gave this bug a different color. Where else can it come from? Think about reproduction, asexual and sexual. So there are two things. One is mutation. What is second one? Can asexual reproduction give you variation? No. Sexual reproduction? Yes. So variation comes from mutation and variation comes from sexual reproduction. And it's very important. That's the first thing you need for the natural selection to occur. So write it down if you're taking notes. Now that variation has to be linked to the genes, because if it's not linked to the genes, it cannot be passed on. So it has to be able to be passed on. It has to be linked to the particular genotypes. And that's the second thing that you need. Third is basically heredity. So let's look at this picture first. So we have variation. We have green color, brown color. The trees, they have a brown color bark. Therefore, the brown ones, they are being selected for. The environment is favoring this. The green ones easy to detect. Therefore, birds, they're gonna eat on them. They're the predators. They're gonna eat these. And these are the ones that are going to increase in number. So the allele frequency is going to change for them. It's going to increase and it's going to decrease for this. So differential reproduction. There's something that's being favored by the environment. Then the genes, the brown ones, get passed on. So heredity. So you have to live long enough to reproduce. So that's heredity. So you need three things for natural selection. Now, if you have that, so I wrote them down too here. So you have genetic variation. That means there are different alleles present in the environment. If we were just clones of each other, what would have happened during coronavirus? So if we were
we will have the same effects.
We'll have the same effects. If it was able to kill a few, it would wipe us all out, right? Now, limited resources. So every habitat contains limited supplies of resources required for survival. In this case, it was the birds that were eating the insects. Now, what happened when coronavirus started? What happened to toilet paper and food supply in stores?
They were completely wiped out. Like there was nothing left for like
there was nothing left, right? So there were limited resources. Let's say in this case, toilet paper. So people went crazy. They went to the stores. They stocked up so much toilet paper. And just a hypothetical situation. Let's say if you don't get toilet paper, you die. So the people who were able to get to the resources, maybe they were faster, they would survive. The people who couldn't get to the resources, they would die off. In this case, we're talking about toilet paper. Then overproduction of the offspring. More individuals are born than survive to reproduce. So if there's a lot of people that are being born, if you have a big family, you're gonna need more toilet paper. So that's gonna create struggle for existence. So individuals gonna compete for the limited resources that enable them to survive. In this case, we're talking about toilet paper. Let's say there's a last stock of toilet paper. There are two people. In this case, we're gonna talk about physical fitness. One is really big and strong, and the other one is not so strong. They're gonna fight for the toilet paper. Who's gonna win? Because in this case, if they don't get toilet paper, they die.
The one who is stronger.
The one who's stronger, right? So that's the struggle for existence. You want to get to the splice, you want to compete for them. It can be physical competition, it can be mental competition, whatever type of competition, it's for struggle for existence, because you want to, you know, live and you want to reproduce, pass on the traits. And depending on who survives, that means those are the traits that you need in order to live in that environment. If you have those, you're going to live, you're going to reproduce, those traits going to be passed on. If you don't have the traits, then you're going to die, you're not going to pass anything on, and, you know, basically going to go extinct. So then we have unequal reproductive success. So the inherited characteristics of some individuals make them more likely to obtain resources. I just gave you the example of one person being strong and the other one not being strong. Someone asked a question, I thought it was interesting. Someone said, oh, what if the other person has martial arts? So martial arts, that's something, it's, you know, that you learn, but maybe it requires you to have flexible body. So maybe the person with martial art wins, maybe they have genes for a flexible body and they're the ones get passed on. But there are some things that you learn. Some are the skills, for example, hunting skills you learn over time. Maybe you need some type of coordination that's maybe linked to your brain, and there are genes for that. So the genes that's going to help you survive, those are the ones that's going to get passed on, because you live long enough in order to reproduce. When all these things happen, that's what gives you descent with modification. Over many generations, natural selection can change the characteristic of population and even give rise to new species. So basically, gene frequency is changing over time. There is a modification that's happening. And the ones that are getting higher in number are the ones that are helping you live in that environment. Any questions on these?
So basically, you are saying you are just talking about survival of the fittest, right?
Yes, survival. Now, actually, that's interesting. That's interesting question. So survival of the fittest. When we say fittest, what are we talking about? Are we talking about physical fitness here?
No, someone who has the endurance to withstand, because if you know how to, perform martial arts, you might not have the endurance to continue. Then the person
go ahead, George. Sorry.
Okay, the person who has the endurance would survive, because you might be kicking the person and the person will be enduring. At some point, you that is kicking will get tired, and and the person who has the endurance will finish you off.
Okay, so you're talking about an ability of endurance in this case. So when we talk about survival of the fittest, we are talking about the person who has the skills in order to survive in that environment and is able to pass on the genes. So the whole purpose here is to pass on your genes. Person who's able to adapt in that environment and is able to reproduce. They're the one, who are the fittest to survive in that environment. So that's what's referring to survival of the fittest. It's not talking about physical fitness. It's just you live long enough to pass on your genes. So let's back up a little bit. So let's look at Darwin. So he came up with this theory of evolution in 1859, and I said it's been like 150 and 60 years since this happened, or 140, almost 200. Anyways, so it's been a long time since this happened, and there are a lot of experiments that has happened since then. So this was Mendel's Mendelian genetics happened around 1865, so around the same time. And after that, there was a lot of experiments that had happened in these hundreds of years in order to kind of look back at and collect the evidence for evolution. So there was this fruit fly experiment that was done. These are most commonly used in the experiments. You guys also did a virtual lab on fruit flies. And then they were able to discover the DNA. Watson and Crick discovered the DNA. Now they have more of modern technology where they can actually compare the DNA of those different finches and they can see if they're related. Whereas Darwin, he didn't have that evidence. He just looked at he actually talked to a bird expert in order to even find out if the birds were related. So he didn't have that evidence for this theory, but we have the evidence because of this modern technology now, because of DNA fingerprinting, PCR. We can use these different math models, and we can test this theory over and over, and it's been supported. It's been so long, and it's still being supported. So basically, we are expanding on his findings right now using these different experiments. And this is when I said the difference between the theory and hypothesis. That's why it becomes important. So let me type that. So hypothesis versus theory. So hypothesis is an explanation that's being tested, or it can be supported or not supported, but theory is something that was tested over and over and over, and it was supported. If it was tested 500 times and it was, supported, it's a theory. But it's the 500, after 500 times, even once it's, it's disproven, or it's not being supported. I don't like using the word disproven. It's not supported, then, it's not a theory anymore. It has to be modified, or it has to be, changed. So that's the difference between hypothesis and a theory.